It is now a little bit past 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the Urbana City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Here.
Mr. Garrick? Mr. Lewis? Here. Ms. Marlin?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe? Here. Ms. Stevenson?
Present.
Mayor Pressing?
Here. First item is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. That's for August 3rd, 2009.
Second.
Okay, motion by Stevenson, seconded by Lewis. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? All right, we'll move on to petitions and communications. And I've invited Susan Henry to talk about a project that she has on doing a book. And Susan, would you like to come up and talk about your project on the Chinese goose? Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Susan Henry, and I live in Tuscola. The little black thing? Okay. Hi, I'm Susan Henry, and I'm here to talk about the Goose book, and I'm from Tuscola. And, okay. This is the plaque, or this is a picture of the plaque that was put on the bridge for Goose, and I'd like to thank all of you for approving that plaque that we were able to put on there for him. He went to the fair, so that's why it's the picture is in a frame. Got honorable mention. The book is going to be about the history of Goose, and it's going to reflect how he got to the Crystal Lake and how many years he lived there. Was like 18. And then also there's going to be pictures in it, and it's part of the history of Urbana. It has, we have several of us that love Goose, and so in the middle of the book I would like for all of us to have little stories about him, and I'd like to have that in the middle of the book. And then talk about the rest of the book will be about how he lived and what happened to him and why we put the plaque on the bridge. So that's basically what it's going to be about. It's a children's book, more or less. Or, grown-ups too that love him.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Susan?
I was just going to comment that I think I was in New Orleans last December and in Audubon Park, and I think I came across a couple of Chinese geese there. Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't get a chance to really take a good look, but I did see a couple that I thought were Chinese geese.
Yeah, that's why I put the pictures in to the outline and stuff that I showed you, so you could see what he looked like and the story about his passing, and then also the article about the plaque being put on the bridge, just so that you would know the history a little bit behind why that we're writing the book about him. And it's a passion of mine. I wanted to do it for a long time, and now that he's passed, he can't be hurt, but it would be great to have his history in Urbana.
Dennis.
This is really kind of a happy little project. It seems really positive, and
Thank you.
Maybe this will be a trend. Maybe we'll be supporting and finding interesting stories, small interesting stories, and adding them to the culture of our town.
I think that would be wonderful.
Let's see how this works out.
Thank you.
I think it'd be nice to have in the Urbana Library for children. And it's also just a documentation of the history, and we could probably put it on our website, too.
That would be great. I would like that a lot.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and we'll work with you on, seeing
you.
what we can put together in terms of the costs and everything.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you listening to me and letting me be here tonight, and I pray that it's going to turn out just like you would approve, and it can be done in a timely manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to talk to the Urbana City Council? Okay, let's move on. I don't think we have any old business. Reports of standing committees, the Committee of the Whole, that would be Heather.
Ordinance number 2009-07-089, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Alcoholic Liquors, Article 1, Section 3-1, and Article 3, Section 3-42 of the Code of Ordinances, number of T1 licenses per license holder per year. For the committee, I so move.
Okay, motion by Stevenson, seconded by Lewis. Any discussion? Brandon Bowers, thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say I support this. I think $78 is a completely reasonable fee when people are having huge events. I thank the mayor's office for trying to streamline the paperwork and kind of do a one-stop, turn in of all the paperwork. And if the limit of the number of events turns out to be a burden, I look forward to revisiting it and figuring out how, if this limit, cuts off events from happening in the downtown, how we can weigh what's a reasonable amount of activity and a reasonable amount of noise, and come to some good balance of those. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
No, and if I could be recognized and speak to my vote.
Sure.
I just don't want to limit the number of special events that can be held each year. That's why I voted no. I want to see a vibrant downtown, and if it means that Bunny Taverns has, something every weekend, then I'd love it if that could happen. So that's why I voted no.
Okay. That motion carries. I don't think we have any reports of special committees. Reports of officers. I think Chief Bealey has a report.
Good evening. In your packet tonight, you'll find a memo that I put together for the council. It relays the results of our study. The ordinance last summer that was passed required us to conduct a one-year study in which we were going to try and ascertain the impact of mobile communication devices as a cause of an accident. Throughout the year starting July the 1st, 2008 through June the 30th, 2009, we were able to identify 8 accidents that were caused either by text messaging or cell phone use. And all 8 were appropriately cited under our city ordinance. I also provided a quick synopsis of each accident so you get a basic feel on what the occurrence was. And also on the second page provided some accident history. I, for one, was curious whether the advent of everybody on cell phones and lots of other things had dramatically or notably increased our number of accidents. While this is certainly not a conclusive study, there are lots of things in favor of less accidents than there were 20, 25 years ago. Our numbers certainly seem to be on a downward trend from the mid-'80s. And with that, I'll take questions. Charlie.
Yeah, well, and especially if you do the per capita adjustments on this, which I thought would be interesting to add, you definitely bring it down. I know we have more traffic control devices and
Certainly.
such, and and that may speak to that. I'd sort of be curious to know why we have this sort of downward per capita trend. Of course, nationally, I think there's a downward per capita
There has
trend
been.
too, right? Yeah. So,
Yes.
I thought it was also interesting that the federal. Let's see, we have the highway safety. I forget all the committee acronyms. We have the one insurance group that's now recommending a total ban on the use of cell phones based on their own reporting and the number of fatalities that they're attributing to and their percentage of statistics on this. And clearly text messaging is the most dangerous thing you can be doing with a cell phone. So I'm glad we're doing something there. So follow-up question is, the state has its ban on text messaging that goes into effect, what, January 1?
Yes, I've got that in front of me.
And what, I haven't had a chance to read it, what does all that include, and what does that, how does that affect our ordinance and so on?
Well, essentially, you're correct. It goes into effect January the 1st. Theirs is an electronic communication device, and it talks about wireless telephones, personal digital assistants, portable or mobile computers, and then it goes on to a long definition of what those devices are. It essentially outlaws text messaging as we know it and understand it. Additionally, there is a cell phone ban if you're in a school zone or construction zone, but I do believe there is a hands-free exception to both of those. The other notable difference between the law that will take effect on January the 1st and our city ordinance is that will be a $75 fine, much the same as a stop sign ticket of running a stoplight or many other accident-causing rules of the road ticket. It is a $75 fine. Now, there's some graduated penalties. If you get the ticket, I think, 3 times in a certain time period, there's increased penalties. But that is the predominant difference between our city ordinance currently and the new state law is the difference in fines.
Heather?
When it says computers, does that affect the police?
There's law enforcement exemptions. There's also a list of exemptions for various people. Law enforcement is one of those exemptions, and that is only while doing official business.
Okay.
Charlie?
Yeah, and this is sort of a follow-up question. I had a conversation with University of Illinois police officer, and he told me that they don't write any tickets based on Urbana ordinances, that they've been told not to do that. Is there a particular reason why they can't just?
Yes, there is history. There is not a reason. I've had a recent discussion with our legal department, in fact, has posed the question. They were contacted, Ron O'Neill was contacted from the University of Illinois, and I had to recount for them 5 years of history. The Champaign Police Department and the University of Illinois had a cooperative agreement which allowed them the ability to write Champaign City ordinance violations. Mostly that was done in conjunction with alcohol details, the bars. I contacted a former U of I police chief who's no longer there and made the offer several years ago that Urbana would be happy to allow University of Illinois police officers to enforce or have the option to write Urbana city ordinances. She expressed some concern and some difficulties with that and was supposed to get back to me. Nothing happened for a number of years until recently we heard from the university asking why we wouldn't allow that, and I corrected our city legal staff saying that we've been trying to do that for a number of years. So I believe that's in progress. Ron O'Neill would know more about it.
Yeah, okay. It just makes no sense to me not to do that if we can. So I'd all
Certainly.
for it. Sure. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Brandon?
Well, Chief, thank you for this report. It's really helpful to kind of shine the light on these crashes where people have made a choice to get into their car and text message and put themselves and others at risk. I wondered if you're planning to do this report again each year so that we can continue to watch these statistics at least once a year, or if we had only requested that on a one-time basis with the enactment of our ordinance?
We could certainly do it again in the city ordinance that was passed last year. It wasn't so much a request to do it again. It says there will be a study period. We'd be happy to do it again. We're going to continue to ask the question on accidents. You know, whether you want it yearly or whatever, it's most of the things we provide to council are simply requested, and if that's the council's desire, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd appreciate to see next year at the same time to again kind of see what this looks like and how it's changed things. I have one just follow-up question, which is with the local fine of $750, if I remember the fine correctly, and the state fine of $75. are we still always going to write the local fine amount, or do we have to now follow the state amount after January?
It would be
1st?
the officer's option. We
Discretion,
have,
okay.
we have a large number of coexisting laws and ordinances, be it loud music coming from a vehicle, retail theft. I mean, there are a large number of things. The officers usually use their discretion on which one that they issue. And I would suggest that we currently or continue to give the officers that discretion.
Okay.
How many of these people actually got the $750 ticket?
Everybody listed on this chart was issued a city notice to appear for the $750. And getting back to are we going to continue the study, you'll notice I did add one that was after the study period. I wanted to give you the most current information. We had another one in July.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other reports of officers? Okay, let's move on to new business. First is a motion to approve the amendment to the application for funding through the City of Urbana / Cunningham Township Consolidated Social Services Program. This is to allow the Independent Media Center to include, I believe it was materials in their grant.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Lewis. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Ordinance number 2009-08-090, an ordinance amending the City of Urbana Comprehensive Plan for 2005, adopting the Champaign County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. We have Robert Myers, our planner, here to explain this to us.
Hi, everyone. The City of Urbana currently has a hazard mitigation plan, which is not so much about responding to disasters, but how to avoid injury and damage in the first place. In 2005, the Urbana City Council adopted our own hazard mitigation plan, and we made that an element of our comprehensive plan. It was also approved by FEMA, recognized by FEMA. They anticipate that we will update the 2005 plan by 2010. In 2008, an opportunity came to actually create a countywide natural hazard mitigation plan. And since 2008, first, this body authorized city staff to participate in creating a countywide plan, and we have done so since 2008. It's interesting that all 24 municipalities in Champaign County actually took part in creating this plan, as well as the University of Illinois, Parkland College, and the county itself. So altogether, 27 jurisdictions participated in creating this plan. And now, after it's been actually written and produced, the county is asking each jurisdiction to adopt it separately, which tonight here we're at that phase. It's not only about keeping people and property safe, but also qualifying the city for hazard mitigation grant funds. And in fact, we're making sure that we're updating the plan again by our 2010 deadline. In fact, we're a little ahead, but this is great. We're asking that this countywide plan be adopted by this body, which would actually supersede our 2005 hazard mitigation plan. And additionally, not only to adopt it, but to amend the comprehensive plan and make it an element of that plan. Just so you'll know, the city staff actually wrote the mitigation actions, which is really the heart of the plan. You'll see in your memorandum from the staff the top mitigation actions that we're recommending. And if I could say so. We looked at this kind of in a common sense, kind of a broadly beneficial way. We tried to recommend mitigations that were easily enough attainable and that had the most broad benefit, and especially in terms of cost as well. And I'll just go over two quickly. One of the recommended actions was to offer and promote the use of area-wide warning text message system, such as AlertSense, and that actually has come online. I'd like to let the public know that people in the community and in the county can sign up for text message alerts for all sorts of different hazards, and they can do so by going to the website www.champcoprepares.com, which stands for Champaign County Repairs, but it's champcoprepares.com. And you can actually sign up for public alerts for any of the different hazards that you want, or all hazards. If you want to just sign up for nuclear alerts, you can if you want to, but probably, you know, the winter storms, I'd say, and the tornadoes are probably a little more practical. The only other mitigation action that I wanted to mention tonight was that we're calling upon ourselves to amend the City of Urbana's floodplain management regulations to require what's called a 1-foot freeboard above the 100-year floodplain for new construction. That means that new construction that's along the margins of areas that traditionally flood, such as Boneyard Creek and the Saline Creek, that right now we have a requirement that stay above the 100-year floodplain. And what that means, that number is not magical. It doesn't mean that if you're above the 100-year floodplain, it's not going to flood. What it means is that statistically there's a 1% chance, if you're at the 100-year floodplain level, in any 1 year, a 1% chance that your property will be flooded. But you know what? That 100-year floodplain, the line on the map is actually based on statistical hydrological models, and there are certain assumptions that have gone into that. So we're looking at adopting an additional 12 inches of elevation for new construction above the 100-year floodplain to account for those statistical assumptions that have gone into this. And it's something I think that would be beneficial for the community. But that's probably the reason I mentioned that particular mitigation action is it may be the one that affects the private sector the most. At the Plan Commission hearing the other night, I did ask Andrew Fell, who's an architect and now serving on the Plan Commission, if he had any comments on this requirement, and he thought that it could be reasonably accommodated in new development, especially because it only affects a limited number of properties along the Boneyard Creek and Saline Creek. The Plan Commission reviewed the request, and they're recommending that the City Council approve the hazard mitigation plan and adopt the portions of the plan that pertain to the City of Urbana as an element of the 2005 Comprehensive Plan. So tonight, your options are to adopt the hazard mitigation plan, adopt it with any specific changes, or not approve the hazard mitigation plan.
Heather Stevenson.
I would move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Stevenson, seconded by Smythe. Any discussion?
Yes.
Dennis Roberts. Sorry, I was looking in that direction.
I looked at the plan, not every single page, but I tried to look at it and absorb it. One of the action items actually was listed as number 1 in Figure 5.1 is the hazard mitigation coordinator. Who would that be and how would that be established? Is that going to be a city coordinator, or is that going to be, I guess it would be because this is a city ordinance, is that correct?
1 second, let me pull this up.
So do we have that in place already? Okay.
Yeah, the response was, I'm sorry, that Tony Foster is the coordinator for the city.
So he would
City
continue.
staff, at least.
Okay.
Charlie Smythe.
No, Didn't Tony come and give us I thought he gave us, didn't he come and give us a presentation about how we can put our cell phone numbers into?
Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
Okay.
He did for the alerts, and we had that question come up again at the Plan Commission. Everyone was asking, well, how can I sign up for these alerts? And I wasn't prepared for that question, so I wanted to let the public know. The last time I heard, Tony Foster thought that we as a community could do better in terms of people signing up for the alerts. So that's another reason I thought I would mention it again.
It strikes me as something that should be running on UPTV and on the city website up front, so but I'll check the city website, see if it's up there, but that's an easy thing to put on the front page. The questions I have, first I wanted to thank you and Tony for what looks like a lot of work, all the other people who got this done. Looks like it's been pretty fruitful for about 18 months of work. I got a kick out of reading the page of acronyms that were included. I also want to thank you for providing it on CD. My big question is the financial costs. I know there's some mitigation action that's recommended here. Looks like Chief Dilley's going to be paying for a big portion of it out of his budget. But a lot of these seem pretty reasonable, and things that we're already doing, right? Yes, we are. Okay. Most of that, yes. Okay. Any big budgetary hits? No. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so thanks to all involved.
Yeah, the number one mitigation action item actually for the new plan would be the complete installation of emergency backup power systems for remaining essential city facilities such as fire stations 2 and 3 in the Civic Center. The reason for the Civic Center is that's an area where people gather. It's a backup area where people gather in case of emergency. In our funding source, we listed as federal and local funding, and our time frame within 2 years or as funding permits. So we're looking at doing it within 2 years, but we realize if funding doesn't permit within 2 years, it may go a little longer.
Robert Lewis.
When you came up with the 1 foot of rise over and above the existing 100-year flood,
Yes.
when that occurs, is that action going to be retroactive, or is it going to be from that point forward? What does that mean?
It would be for that point forward, it'd be for new construction. After well, okay, let me back up even a little farther. This, adopting this plan won't automatically make that a new regulation or rule, but it would call upon the city then to follow up with an action item to present you with an ordinance change to raise the freeboard to 1 foot above the 100-year floodplain. So we would come back and let you review it in detail, and we would explain what the reasoning in detail and things like that. And at that time, you'd have a chance to say yes or no.
That's a significant volume of water when you consider a 1 foot rise at that plane, for the saline, for example.
Right. Should that be adopted, should we change that regulation, it would affect new construction. To give an example, there are a number of buildings right now that are in the 100-year floodplain. It's just they exist. Right. And there's all sorts of rules that are set up about how to deal with buildings that are currently in the 100-year floodplain and their construction and their maintenance and repair and et cetera.
That's what I was concerned about, because that's going to be significant to not only the council but to developers and the alike that are having to deal with what is already there, and what's the impact of the maintenance criteria once you are within that plane. So if it would be helpful to know a lot of that. I think the council, I don't know if they would be interested in that or not, but I think before they act on it, I think they should understand that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Could you explain what 1 foot freeboard actually means?
The way I understand it is that 1 foot freeboard is kind of like I'll call it a fudge factor. I know that's not the engineering term for it, but that's what I would call it. And Bill Gray will probably have a lot more scientific explanation than that, but
1 foot freeboard is a term, we call it factor of safety.
Factor of safety.
But anyway, it's 1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation is what that is. So you protect a structure that's lowest entry level for water to flow in would be at least 1 foot or more above the 100-year flood elevation. And that's a flood elevation that was determined by FEMA, in our case, years ago, which is listed on our FEMA maps, our floodplain maps.
Does that mean building a building a little bit higher or with higher?
Exactly that. The top of foundation, which is typically your lowest entry level into a structure,
Would be
1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation. That's what 1 foot freeboard is.
That's better.
Dennis Roberts.
And so we have buildings that are probably within the floodplain that are 120 years old or so. When would they? Are they going to be grandfathered as is? When does this affect standing buildings? When there's repair to the building, or does this apply only to new construction?
Well, it certainly would apply to new construction.
Yes.
And I think if there is significant flood damage to a structure, and this, FEMA has, with flood insurance, if there's a certain percentage of that structure is damaged, you may have to, in order to rebuild it, you may have to meet the new requirements, and I'd have to research that to let you know. Or if it's damaged in throughout, it can be bought out by FEMA and demolished and turned into green grass, just an open area. But no, for structures that are existing, this doesn't mean they have to go back and retrofit them. But for peace of mind, some homeowners or businesses may, in fact, do want to provide extra protection. They can do that on their own. And we can provide the elevations to tell them, well, this is how high you need to protect to provide that 1 foot of freeboard, or go higher.
And does that kind of alteration to property, I mean, is it one of the steps that might be taken be like a retaining wall of a certain height? I mean, is part of this process suggesting to people who have property along the boneyard, for example, certain kinds of construction features to safeguard their property?
We can always provide that information. Every structure is different as to how you would protect it. If you wanted to flood-proof it, okay. But I'm not aware of a whole lot of flood-proofing activity that's going on in the past. That'd be Building Safety Division would have a little better handle for that, but I'm just not aware of too much that has occurred in recent years. So,
I have a question. The 100-year floodplain was determined by historical data. What year was the ending year that they were measuring?
Originally, when FEMA contracted a consultant to determine floodplains throughout the United States, there was some watershed modeling that was going on, and whatever the state of the art for that type of engineering work in the mid-'70s to late '70s, it was going on. I can't speak to specifics as to what it was, but they did use rainfall data and hydraulic and hydrology information for streams and rivers that was available, and made these, I would call, conservative determinations. The boneyard, as you know, is currently going through review by FEMA. We've not heard back from them yet for determining a new floodplain because of the improvements done in Champaign and on campus. And we've had public meetings already explaining the existing floodplain limits and the proposed floodplain limits. And that work was conducted by the USGS Water Division office in town here. and that has been submitted to FEMA for final approval. We haven't heard when we'll know that, but when it is approved by FEMA, we'll have a different floodplain map, and that will be the new law, if you will, as to what activities can and cannot occur within a floodplain.
So do you think that maybe the level in the boneyard might be going down because of all these improvements and the retention ponds and everything? And I just wondered about if there are more heavy rainfalls now, would it affect an unimproved stream like the saline? Because if it's like 1970 data, is there any evidence that the climate has shifted toward heavier rainfall than in the past 100 years?
I really can't answer that question, but I think for the most part, the analysis, and it'd be easier if I just made copies of the existing elevations and the proposed elevations, but for the most part, there aren't a whole lot of changes in Urbana.
Okay.
There's some minor, there's some locations where the new 100-year floodplain is lower than it was in the older data, and for various reasons. But I would say the most significant changes was a better refinement of the definition of the floodplain. If you recall, within a floodplain, which is that area that's inundated in a 100-year, theoretical anyway, 100-year flood event, there's a portion that is moving water that carries the flow, if you will, of that event, which is called a floodway. And the area that's inundated in that 100-year event beyond the flowing water is called the flood fringe. And there's quite a bit of difference in the new definition or new determination of the floodway in the past. In some cases, it's gotten much larger, and for development purposes, that's not good because you cannot impact the floodway, you cannot impact upstream, downstream flow and stage, discharge situations. So there are some areas immediately downtown, west of downtown, that have a larger, wider floodway, which will impact redevelopment if and when it ever occurs.
Thank you. Robert Lewis?
How would that affect the Crystal View area? Did you happen to take a look at that by chance?
There's been no change to the floodplain there, and Crystal View was designed with the 1 foot freeboard in their top of elevation. So I think there was just a small portion of that near Broadway that was even in the floodplain. The balance was out of the floodplain, period. But the engineer, developer, owner was very careful to set those elevations 1 foot above. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is ordinance number 2009-08-091, an ordinance approving an agreement for use of right-of-way at 214 West Main Street. Again, our Director of Public Works, Bill Gray.
Thank you. This is a request that came in very recently for remodeling, new restaurant owner that is desirous to have a canopy installed, which would be installed in the city right-of-way to support the proposed canopy awning over the right-of-way for chairs and tables for setup. We've reviewed the request. The positioning of the columns to support the awning are located in a way that will still allow access for the public to walk on public sidewalk around this area. We have included in the packet our fairly standard license agreement with some minor modifications to fit this request. We've had a very recent similar request that this council acted on not too long ago for Carl on Church Street for their digestive health care canopy area on the south side of Church by Orchard and Kohler, or McCullough, excuse me, McCullough and Kohler. And, no, it is Orchard, excuse me. So it's a similar request to that, and that they'll be occupying right away, and we seek your approval.
Mr. Bowersox.
Bill, it looks like there's about 4 foot 10 inches of like clear passable right of way. Do you all have a standard for that so that when anybody comes along, we know what? Okay, it's always 4.
4 feet minimum.
Okay, great. Well, I support this. I'd make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion by Bowersox, seconded by Smythe. Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Miss Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe? Miss Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. Next, 2 appointments I'd like to make. First, Paul Armstrong to be the Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. He's already on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And Alona Matkovsky to be on the Public Arts Commission. Motion by Smythe, seconded by Bowersox. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. We now would like to go into closed session for property acquisition. Is there a motion?
I move that we go into closed session for the purpose of property acquisition issues pursuant to Chapter 5 of the Illinois Consolidated Statutes, Section 120/2, C5.
Motion by Smythe, seconded by Marlin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Miss Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Miss Stevenson?
Yes.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes. Okay. We're back in open session, and we are at ordinance number 2009-08-092, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a contract for purchase of real estate at 502 and 504 South Broadway Avenue.
So moved?
Motion by Stevenson, seconded by Roberts. Charlie Smythe.
For the record, I just want to point out that these are the revised versions that we've just been handed.
Is revised in that the prices are included. Any other comments? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Miss Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe?
Yes.
Miss Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. And I suppose we should say what the price is, correct?
For the
Okay.
next one.
Ordinance number 2009-08-093, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, and this is for the purchase of 502 and 504 South Broadway Avenue for a cost of $285,000, including $35,000 for demolition.
Second.
Was that Stevenson?
Yes.
And Marlin was
Marlin.
the second? Okay, any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Miss Marlin?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Smythe? Miss Stevenson?
Yes.
I think.
Doesn't the mayor have to vote?
I have to vote on that one, too.
Mayor Pressing?
Yes. That motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.